Hello and welcome to the Indie Lounge. I'm your host, Mandy Del Rio, and today we are here with the extremely talented comedy writer, author, and filmmaker, Mr. John DeBellis.
Hello.
Hey, how are you, John?
Feeling like I have a lot to live up to just to get past your intro. Intimidated by the introduction already. Yeah.
Well, thanks for coming on.
Oh, no, it's great. Great to be here.
So, I want to get into you. You've had an extraordinary career. You have done stand-up. You've written this book called Stand-Up Guys, A Generation of Laughs, about your career in stand-up. You have been a staff comedy writer for some of the biggest TV shows and comedians of basically all time. And you have been, you've written and directed your own movie. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I wish my bank account reflected some of those things. But at this point, it doesn't. I'm not right now. But yeah, I mean, I started as a stand-up, and this book is not really, it's not about my career as much as it's a time period that was really unique in stand-up. I mean, if you notice, if you can see, that's Bill Maher. This is me, actually. It's Bill Maher, it's Larry David, Piscopo, and Richard Lewis. But it's about that time period and what it was like to be in the clubs back then, and what it was to move on, to go up to be a heavyweight, to get the prime spots and all that stuff. So if anybody wants to know about a period, that's what it's about.
Yeah. And I've read some excerpts from it, and it's got there's some really amazing stories. I mean, these are big guys. These are huge guys in the comedy world. Definitely a few of my favorites personally. And I want to definitely touch more on the book, and because the book's, it is sort of about how you started in stand-up.
Yep.
So what made you, how did you get started in stand-up?
Well, I guess I had a therapist describe it once, and he said that comics, the thing that they're most afraid of in life is getting laughed at. So they go on stage and they're counterphobic. They figure they'll control the laughter. I'm going to get laughed at anyway, so I might as well control it. So that's part of it, and I guess I wanted to do it since I was a little kid, and then I was frightened to death, and so I went to art school, and one weekend on way back to my parents' house, or the way, I stopped at the improv and improvisation, and I said I had to do this. That was it. I just had to do it.
It's amazing.
Then I auditioned, and then.
Yeah, that's really cool. I mean, yeah, it doesn't leave you. I think it's just part of you've got a certain things that make up your DNA, and what drives you is always going to be with you. It's if you don't do it, you don't feel complete.
Yeah, I mean, there's still that drive to do stand-up. No matter what I do, there's always that drive to do stand-up. It's always there.
Do you still do it? Do you do
it? Yeah, I
cool.
pick and choose the places I do it. But it's always there. I have a thing I want to do now, but on the net, where I'm actually going to do it in a straitjacket.
Really?
Yeah, but I haven't shot it yet
cool.
because I have to green screen a padded cell behind me.
Oh, that's funny. Oh, I can't wait to see that.
Yeah, we get it done first.
Cool. Yeah, I know, right? Sounds good.
Yeah, sounds good. Sounds good. That's good in theory.
It is. So you still kind of delve in stand-up, and when did you go from the transition from stand-up to comedy writing? Because why don't you tell our audience what you've written for?
Well, first of all, you start off writing jokes for people. And the first joke I had ever written for anyone else was for Elaine Boozler. And it was you're getting fat when you step on your dog's tail and he dies. And that's the first one I ever sold. And then there was a comedian, Alan Zweibel, who worked on the original Saturday Night Live. And when Alan went over there, Alan gave me all his Catskill clients. So I was writing for them, and from there, Alan wanted to get me on SNL earlier, but I didn't. I was just doing stand-up, and it was, But then you get, you're living on $8 a day, you're $16 a day cab fare, so you got to do something else to make money. So I'm trying to make it shorter. They were auditioning for people to be on the show. I had no interest in being on the show as an actor or anything. So to get what I would do to get extra spots and extra money, I would open the show and go across town. Well, I opened the show, and I was the one they wanted.
Oh, that's awesome.
You know, and that happened once before at ABC. Another time I didn't want to do it, and they wanted me. So I don't know. So the thing is not to want to do anything, and go on in the worst spot possible when you get it. You know.
And not expect anything, right?
No.
So as a comedy writer, then, like, who, if you would like to tell us who you've written, I know you were with SNL.
I was with SNL.
Uh-huh.
Then the next thing I did with Billy Crystal. He had a show on for a while.
Mm-hmm.
A bunch of different shows. And Tonight Show with Carson,
Mm-hmm.
which is one of the most intimidating things in the world. I had done a Christmas special because I knew the talent coordinator. And the next day he got my stuff to Carson, and Johnny loved it, and he called up. He had Freddie DeCordova, the producer, called me the next day and said, "Johnny loves your stuff. He's reciting the material.
Wow.
He wants you to come in." So you go in there and you sit in the office. You're in this office in a small chair, and you look around, and every wall is covered with magazine covers of Carson. And then you go into the room, and closer than I am to you, knee to knee, is Johnny.
Oh my God.
And I was like
gosh.
a wreck. I know, and he's looking through the material and it's saying this and saying. I mean, it was one of the great moments in my life, but one of the scariest moments in my life.
I can imagine. I can imagine.
Well, he's responsible for the growth in stand-up.
Yeah.
Because he brought up more stand-up comedians, and he loved stand-up comedians.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, for comics, we loved them.
Yeah, yeah. I can imagine. I mean, first of all, the country loved Johnny Carson, right? But especially someone like you guys. I mean, yeah, I can imagine that being very intimidating.
Oh, yeah, and we'd always, if we were at the Improv or Catch a Rising Star, if anybody was on the show, we'd watch it on the monitor, you know, and watch it go on.
Neat.
So that was kind of fun.
Oh, that's really cool. That is so cool.
We'd wait for Johnny to throw his pencil, because if he threw his pencil, then you knew he loved it.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's cool. That was the key, huh?
Yeah.
That was really cool. I think we're going to wrap up for a break right now, but when we come back, I want to touch base on more of your comedy writing.
Okay.
Because you were the head writer at DC Follies.
I love that show.
Was that your favorite?
Of all the shows I did on TV, the small syndicated show that did really well, but Cannon owned the show, and the Crofts owned the puppets, and they were both cheating each other out of money, and so they couldn't agree, and that's how the show went off.
Oh my gosh. Oh my God, that's terrible.
Yeah.
I didn't know. I mean, why would I know that?
Marty Krofft he was a character. We had one. I'm going longer. You can cut it, I guess. We had one guy who did impressions, and he had a really bad day, and his father had died. So we went up and we said, you got to give the guy a break. His father died, And Marty said, "So what? We didn't kill him."
Oh, man.
That was Marty.
That's terrible.
Yeah,
That's terrible.
Yeah.
Oh, my God. Well, let's take a short break, but I want to come back to more of that, and I'd like to talk, because I think Sid and Marty Krofft, they did, H&R Puff and stuff? Did they do that show?
They did that show, but
That's how I would know them, right, being a little kid at that time. And DC Follies, too. But,
yeah, that's a political thing. It was fun.
Yeah, so I'm going to take a break.
Okay.
We are going to take a short break, but when we come back, more with John DeBellis, so stay tuned. Hi, welcome back to the Indie Lounge. I'm your host, Mandy Del Rio, and we are here with author, comedy writer, and filmmaker John DeBellis. John, let's get back to what we were talking about before, comedy writing. I'm really curious. I'm fascinated by it, first of all, and I'm curious what the process is like when you write. You do skit writing.
No, what happened is when I first started doing stand-up, I decided that I would teach myself to be able to write a joke on almost any subject at any time, and I would spend hours, to do that. And there's a thing called pulling to an inside straight, is when you'll write like 3 or 4 lines that sort of connect, and it's almost a story, and then you have to be able to write a joke in between to set them up. So when I knew I could do that, then I know I'd conquered that part. And then the next step was doing sketches, and Alan Zweibel, who was one of the original writers of Saturday Night Live, he had said, just come up with a premise, and he says, don't worry about what's inside. If the premise is good, it will come to you. So then you go on to writing that. And then from there, it's just an adjustment. Then the next sketch thing is you write, obviously, sketches. Then if you're writing sitcoms, stuff like that, if you have to get another sitcom, you have to write usually a spec script of a show. So what I would do is I'd put a tape on of some show, 10 or 11 episodes, and just walk around the house till I hear the rhythms of their voices. Because it's all rhythms comedy, and you hear rhythms. So then it goes from that, and then the next step is writing movies, and again, it's just an adjustment. It's just stretching a premise out longer, finding one
That's
that works.
interesting. That is really interesting.
I tend to be visual, so if I go to write a screenplay, or if I switch, especially a screenplay, I have to get through the first 4 days of nothing. Nothing. And after that, all of a sudden, you're immersed and it starts to come.
It just comes. So basically, writer's block for like 4 days.
It's just saturating yourself with it. That's all
Okay,
it
gotcha.
is.
Taking it all in
feel it,
until
yeah.
it comes out.
But those first 4 days are miserable.
I'm sure. I'm
Yeah.
sure. So what if, with like SNL, is it like a cram fest? Like, I've heard that. I don't know the truth
you're
behind that.
Yeah, you do. It's a lot of you pitch premises, and you don't have a lot of time because it is a long show, and it's production and stuff like that. It's live. So it was 6 or 7 days. I mean, I wasn't crazy about the process there. I don't think the show was as it was as crazy as it should have been.
Right. Gotcha. Yeah. Well, I do want. There's so many more questions I have for comedy writing, but I know we have to move on because you have so much, which is really cool. But you have a lot to cover. I wish we had like an hour. So let's get into your movie. If we could talk about your movie.
Oh boy, that's painful. Yeah, that's like. Yeah.
It's just so cool to me because I can't imagine directing and writing a movie, and props first of all just for doing it. But I want to know, if you want to just talk a little bit about it. And
it was the single hardest thing I think I ever did. I was just stubborn. I told you I worked on a book I just finished called How to Make an Independent Film in Less Than 30 Years, and it literally took from 1980. I sat down, my manager was Chris Albrecht then, who became the head of HBO eventually, and I decided, my therapist ordered me to write a screenplay. So I sat down on a Friday night, and I canceled my shows, and I sat down to write a premise, and I called Chris Albrecht to come over between shows, and I just laid out the idea, and he liked it, and it was just one bad thing. Everything started off good. Sean Cunningham was the first one, did Friday 13th, Option. It was just a crazy story. And again, directing a film, the most important people to me on a film set, are the writer, the director of photography, and later the editor.
Right.
Because you have those 3 things, the director's just, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You just know what a comedy is, and the DP points in the right direction.
Now that's called The Last Request.
Yeah.
And
it might have been mine too. Again. Should have been.
And people can get it on Netflix.
I'm not sure where they can get it.
They can get it on Netflix.
Can they?
Yes, it's in my queue. It's years long because I'm really bad with Netflix.
Okay.
But it is there, and people can get it there. It stars Danny Aiello, Frank Vincent is in it, which is really cool.
T.R. Knight from T.R. Knight, Gilbert Gottfried, Tony LoBianca.
And Gilbert Gottfried, now he's He's one of your guys, one of
Yeah.
your stand-up
Yeah,
guys.
I love Gilbert.
Oh,
I love him.
he's hilarious.
The cheapest person that ever lived.
Really?
God, and he loves it.
Yeah, does he?
He did a book, and did a book signing, and what I did is I put money, he signs all the books, and I had to be there I put a $5 bill in, so when he opened it, he just cracked up laughing. Because I used to have people walk up to him on the street and give him money.
Oh,
People
really?
he didn't know, I just corner him and give him $1, and he'd take it. To this day, if I see him, I give him $1, and he takes it.
That is really funny.
But I love Gilly. I love him.
Yeah, he's another one. He's lovable. Now let's get into your book, because this is what I really want to push. On top of everything else, I mean, I want to push everything. But this book, like you said on the cover, you've got Joe Piscopo, Richard Lewis, one of my favorites, Larry David, Bill Maher. You kind of essentially grew up with these guys.
Yeah, we all started basically together. We're very close knit. I mean, this is how close we were. I became friends with Larry's brother, Ken. And Ken was in my wedding party. That's how close we all became.
Yeah.
And it was the best 5 or 6 years of my life.
Yeah, that is really cool.
It was just total freedom of just fun. We laughed and we had a great time, and
yeah,
you'll see it. The whole comics life back then, we didn't have jobs. We lived with a cab fare.
Different time.
We didn't, and we just played all the time.
That is so cool.
It was great. Yeah.
Well, these guys obviously have nice things to say about your book. Particularly touching, Bill Maher almost a word for word, what a time, there's a few quotes in there, Larry's was really funny, but
well, Larry, when I
accuse you of not writing it.
Well, here's a funny thing about it with Larry, because he's in it a lot, because we were very, very close. And,
yeah.
The first person I sent it to make sure it was okay, because there's so much in it, was Larry. And he had me take 2 things out, and they were positive. So
yes.
That's Larry.
That's Larry. That's awesome.
Yeah.
It's good to get some insight into one of my favorite comedians there. And then Richard Lewis.
Yeah, I'm doing something with Lewis now, working on a show together now.
Let's get into what you're working on currently, because I know we got to wrap up. We're pretty much almost done with our segment. But first off, I want to push the book, though, Stand Up Guys, A Generation of Laughs. Where can people
They get
buy
on
it?
Amazon, on any place online.
Okay.
It's actually doing pretty good, so I can't complain. Yeah, and the thing I'm working on with Lewis is just that we decided to do a pilot, or try to pitch some shows. So me and him are working on one now, and we're having fun. Except he's the most neurotic person that ever lived.
He's the most neurotic, but also
he's
one
more
of the
neurotic
best
than Larry.
guys,
There's hands down.
He's more neurotic than Larry, and you.
And me.
Okay.
But he's also one of the sweetest people that ever lived.
Yeah, that's what I've heard.
He'll end your email, says, "Love Richard." He's just the sweetest guy.
Yeah,
I love him.
That's awesome. Well, that wraps up our time for today. Your website is 920spot.com.
And that's because that was my favorite spot at on Saturday nights, was the 920 spot at the Improv. I'd always ask for that.
That is so cool. Well, that's good you got that domain. That's all yours.
That was my spot.
That's awesome. Well, thank you, John, so much. I can't thank you enough for coming on today.
Anytime. You're kidding.
This is fascinating. I'd love to have you back on sometime.
Sure, absolutely.
Okay, great.
I have nothing to do anyway.
Right. Well, that wraps up our interview part of the Indie Lounge, but stick around, because when we come back, we have Todd Staruch, the horror nerd, with his review of Mold. So please stay tuned. Thanks. Welcome back to the Indie Lounge. I'm your host, Mandy Del Rio, and we are now joined by our film reviewer, Mr. Todd Staruch, the horror nerd. Hi, Todd.
Hi, Mandy.
Thanks for coming.
Oh, yeah, thanks for having me back once again, despite the weather.
I was going to say, you risked your life to come here, and we're very appreciative of that.
Thanks. It was fun playing bumper cars.
Well, luckily you didn't get into like a car pileup like you were saying earlier.
Exactly.
Be car number 80. So before we get started, I want to point out that I am not using my cards.
I
I
did notice
ditched my
that.
cards
I
the
didn't
last
want to say
segment
anything when I
because-
noticed it.
yeah,
So let's see how this goes.
I'm going to wing it.
Yep.
I'm going to go by your advice and
Excellent.
wing it.
And I won't. If there are any nervous tics, I promise not to point them out.
Thank you.
So,
Just
all
cover
right.
for me.
I will.
Okay. So what do you got for us today?
Okay, so this time I'm going to be talking about a film called Mold, which is by a local filmmaker named Neil Machino. I've known Neil for a while now in the convention circuit and the indie film circuit. So just to give you and the viewers a brief idea what Mold is about, it's 1984 and we are knee-deep in Ronald Reagan's war on drugs. And a group of scientists is tasked with developing something that could wipe out the coca fields in Colombia, Mexico, et cetera, et cetera. So they developed this new strain of mold that will eat all the plants. But there's only one problem. It also likes to eat people. So not exactly as helpful as you might think. So we have this group of scientists in this facility, and we have the usual cast of characters coming in. The smarmy congressman who funded the whole thing, the scientist who thinks he's playing God, the evil general who doesn't care about the human cost of what's going on. He's worried about the military applications of what's happening. And of course, everybody's assured that nothing could go wrong and this mold is, properly contained. Well, we've seen this story before and we know how that goes. So before you know it, this thing is now loose and starts ravaging these people that are in this facility. So now it becomes a survival tale. And what's fun about it is it's very tongue-in-cheek. And as this story unfolds and people start dying, everybody fulfills their roles really well. So the general refuses to care about what's happening to people. He just wants to know, well, can I still use this as a weapon? The scientist that's trying to tell everybody what to do to save themselves is, of course, completely ignored. Nobody cares. Listen, geek, we don't care what you have to say. Even though you created this entire thing and you're the most knowledgeable of all of us. So the story unfolds fairly typically after that. And we watch these people try to survive their predicament. I won't give away the ending because I'm never about spoilers. But we have a fairly standard, gory, exciting survival tale from there, which I enjoyed very much. One thing that I really loved about it is it's all practical effects. We live in a world of CGI. We've talked about this before. And CGI is a good tool when it's applied properly, but it's way overused today.
Absolutely.
And what I liked about Neil's film, and he talked this up at a convention where I met him and where I first heard about the film, is he's very proud of the practical effects, and he should be. The makeup is good. The stop motion effects of the mold growing and taking over are good. The gore effects are good. And just so the viewers know, it is a gory film, but not overtly so. It fits the story, so it's not gore for gore's sake to say, oh, look how splattery I can be.
Right.
The acting is good. Indie film fans will recognize one of the names. Edward X. Young is a huge name in the indie horror, and he plays the aforementioned general who doesn't care about anything other than how does this benefit him. And the actor, and I'm drawing a blank on his name, it's too bad, but the actor that played the sneaky congressman was top notch. If there ever was a call for overacting, this guy achieved it.
And the nerdy Science School of Acting.
Shatner took lessons from him, as far as I'm concerned. So I do apologize for not remembering his name. But People can find out about Mold on social media. There's a movie page for it, moldthemovie.com.
Okay.
And people can find Neil Machino on social media.
Okay.
I highly recommend it.
Okay.
It's a fun movie. It's got an 80s retro feel to it, and I had a really good time watching it.
Nice. Well, that's great. I can't wait to check it out. How many broken eyeglasses do you give this movie?
You know what? Based on the fact that I just had fun watching it, I think people have forgotten how to have fun watching a movie. Horror Nerd's rating for Mold is a big 4 out of 5 broken eyeglasses.
Very good.
Liked it
Awesome.
very, very much.
Okay, good. Well, people will have to check that out.
Absolutely,
All
highly
right.
recommended.
Awesome. Well, now let's go talk about now your events coming up, because I know we're getting ready to wrap up our segment.
Yes, Grindhouse Nights at Cafe Z. Our next film screening and mini convention is taking place February 28th at Cafe Z in Union, New Jersey. We have a lot of great indie films will be playing there. This is the first public announcement that an indie film called Painkiller by Jerry Janda Jr., directed by Jeremiah Kipp, will be showing at Grindhouse. Painkiller just showed at the Macabre Fair Film Festival out on Long Island, which is a big film festival that I've had the pleasure of being involved with for several years, and I was a judge at this one.
Todd, thank you so much for joining us today and for bearing the weather.
You're welcome.
That wraps up today's episode of the Indie Lounge. I'm your host, Mandy Del Rio. Be sure to check us out online at www.indieloungetv.com. Follow us on Twitter at Indie Lounge TV and on Facebook, facebook.com, Indie Lounge TV. Thank you so much again. This is Mandy Del Rio. See you next time.